Whether you're building a new home or adding on, framing up the situation, or putting a roof over your head. If you need to rock it, roll it, or just get on with it, HOMETIME has a video to help you do it right. Transform your small bathroom into a luxurious master bath, or increase your home's value by updating your old kitchen. Keep your drains draining, your switches switching, and your footing firm. Whether you do it yourself or buy it yourself, HOMETIME's how-to video guides will help you get the results you want. Will make your next project a success. See your local home improvement retailer for the HOMETIME video that's right for you.
There we go. Hi, welcome to HOMETIME. I'm Dean Johnson.
And I'm Robin Hartle. In this videotape, we'll take you through all the steps for installing ceramic tile on floors, walls, and countertops.
Ceramic tiling is a great do-it-yourself project, and with a little study and planning, you can do a pretty decent job. Now, every ceramic tile project is a little different, so we'll use this bathroom and a few other projects to show you some of the possibilities.
We'll start by installing this ceramic tile backer board around this bathtub.
HOMETIME is made possible by Chevy Truck, who brings you Chevy full-size pickups, today's big pickups for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Chevy S-Series pickups, today's compact pickups that play as hard as they work. Chevy's Astro all-wheel drive, today's mid-size van with standard four-wheel anti-lock brakes. Chevy trucks, the most dependable, longest-lasting trucks on the road. The National HOMETIME PBS series is made possible by the Stanley Works. Since 1843, Stanley's been committed to building quality tools and other products to help you do things right.
The most important part of any tile installation job is what goes under the tile, the underlayment. Professional tile contractors often put down a layer of roofing felt, then a wire mesh, then fill the area up with mortar. This is called a mud bed or thickset mortar. A mud bed is not something that a do-it-yourselfer should try. Instead, there are simpler products available at most home centers. Now, if you want a really solid surface for your wall tile, then you want to use this concrete backer board. Now, it's got two things going for it. First of all, it's really stiff. This means it's not going to bend, and the grout in between the tile isn't going to crack. Get a couple spacers in here. Second of all, it's immune to water, which makes it perfect for tubs and showers. Of course, the stuff isn't exactly light, which makes it kind of a pain to work with sometimes. Probably better to do this with two people. Okay, over a little bit. You secure it into the studs every 8 inches with 1.5 inch galvanized roofing nails. 54, 16, okay. This stuff is a lot like drywall in a couple of ways. Like when you cut it, first you score it and then you snap it. Except that it's so strong, it's got fiberglass mesh on each side and a concrete middle. It's so strong that it's best to use a special little knife with a hardened blade instead of your utility knife. There we go. Now, I just cut the fiberglass on the back. The joints in your backer board are solid. You're supposed to mud and tape them just like you do drywall. Only in this case, you use a special fiberglass tape and tile setting mortar instead of drywall mud. Okay, get that on there. These backer board sheets even have a tapered edge so that there's a little depression at the joints. This way, when you put in the mortar, you're not making a little ridge.
Concrete backer board can also be used for floor tiles. On this project, where I worked with Suzanne Egley, we used sledgehammers to remove the old floor tile mud bed underneath. This is tough work, almost a full day for even this modest-sized bathroom. By using a rental power hammer, we trimmed it down to about a 3-hour job. To bring the floor up to the proper height, we then lay down a 5/8 inch layer of underlayment grade plywood. Well, now that we're all set to do the backer board, it's time to make some thin set. We use thin set to set tiles and backer board. Anytime you mix mortar or grout, pour the liquid in the bucket first, then pour in the powder. For thin set, you mix it up until you have the consistency of, say, toothpaste. And once you've got most of the lumps out, you let it set for about 10 minutes before you use it. This is called slaking, and it allows time for any small lumps to dissolve and for all the chemicals to get activated. To attach the backer board, you use a special notch trowel to spread the thin set over the area for the first piece. You use the flat side of the trowel first. This is called the skim coat or the pressure coat. You want the mortar to have really good contact with the plywood. I put some lines down before so I know how big an area the first piece here is going to cover. When the mortar is spread out, I flip the trowel around and use the other side. This has these square notches, and you hold the trowel at about 45 degrees to the floor and comb out the mortar. What this does is it leaves just the right amount of thin set to hold down the backer board. Once the thin set is spread out, you place the first sheet of backer board. Now it's okay to slide this around a little as you set it in place. This will actually help the mortar make good contact with the board.
You also use galvanized roofing nails to secure the backer board. Now keep them about 3/4 of an inch in from the edge. These go every 6 to 8 inches around the edges and across the middle of the piece.
Not like a good 1/4 inch gap. Well, in fact, the gap is so that once we go to tape the seams here, there's enough space in between the sheets so we can get some thin set down in between them. Once all the backer board is down, you need to apply fiberglass tape to the seams. Now, this is a special tape for backer board. It's different from the fiberglass tape you'd see used sometimes on drywall joints. And make sure you don't overlap the tape at the corners. One layer of tape only. As you apply the mortar, you make sure to force it into the gap between the boards. The theory here is to make the joint resemble as closely as possible the material itself. Mortar in the middle with a layer of fiberglass mesh and mortar on the surface. Well, once we're done with these seams, we'll have to let this sit overnight then, right?
Yeah. I guess we're done for the rest of the day, huh?
Yeah, I think that's about the extent of it. Well, most bathrooms you see today have at least a little bit of tile in them. And it's gotten to the point where most home center and flooring stores have a pretty good selection. Well, you're bound to find the old standbys, which, as you can probably imagine, are 4 1/4 inch wall tile. Let's see what I did behind here. Yeah, here we go. In fact, this is probably one of the most popular colors right here, this almond color. This and white are probably the most popular. Now, this is a glazed tile. In fact, all these tile in here are glazed, which means that the finish is baked on the top, which will give it a nice, smooth, hard finish. But the only thing is, you can't see it very well on this one, but the color doesn't go all the way through the tile. Yeah, here, you can see it much better on this one. So the glazing's on the top of the tile, which means the color doesn't go all the way through. So if you've ever seen a chipped tile, the color you'll end up seeing is the bottom part here. And even though the 4 1/4 inch tiles are the old standby, larger tiles like this are getting to be a lot more popular. They have a pretty good selection here. There's a lot of 10 by 10 tiles. They even have quite a few 12 by 12s to choose from. Another route to go would be mosaic tiles. Now, they're typically smaller tiles. Here we go. Smaller tiles that are attached together into a sheet. It makes them a lot easier and faster to install. Now, these particular tiles happen to be unglazed, and they're solid color all the way through. Put those back. What's we got here? Well, and finally, every line of tile is going to have a certain number of trim pieces. You'll have bullnose corners like this. You'll have regular bullnose edges. You'll have countertop bullnose. I mean, it's all over the place. So before you decide on a line, you want to determine if it has the trim pieces you're looking for in the matching color. Now, if you don't see the type of tile you're looking for in a home center setting like this, you might want to check out a specialty designer tile showroom. Let's see what we got.
One of the great things about tiles is the variety of styles they come in. If you scout around a little, you can find some pretty interesting stuff. This store is a distributor's showroom. Homeowners are sent to this type of store by architects, interior decorators, and tile contractors. Normally, a store like this doesn't sell directly to a do-it-yourselfer. Something that's been happening in the last few years is that bigger tiles are definitely in. 12, 16, even 24 inches square. However, it's tough for a do-it-yourselfer to install these correctly. The surface underneath them has to be absolutely even and level. Another trend in high-end tile jobs is natural materials. Slate, marble, granite, and limestone are cut into thin pieces and installed just like tile. At a store like this, you can also get a sense of just how many types of colorful and unique tiles there are. Even if you use middle-of-the-road tiles for your tile job, you might find a special trim piece or accent stripe to really set the job off. Well, the backer board's had a chance to harden overnight, so we're getting ready to set our floor tile. But before we do that, we've got to figure out the tile layout. Now, what makes a tile layout kind of difficult is that tile are these perfect little units, but they don't usually fit evenly into the space you've got to work with. You've got to cut some tile to fit.
Well, the trick is to find the areas in the bathroom that are the most visible and then stick the cut tiles somewhere else. So what we're going to do in here is put our full tiles over here against the bathtub on the wall where you see them as soon as you walk in, and then put the cut tiles underneath the cabinet behind the toilet where you're really not going to notice them.
Now that's one solution. But if you've got a situation where both sides are visible, you're probably going to want to center the tile so that you've got equal cut pieces on either side. Now that's what we did on the long direction of this room. We centered the tile between the door opening and the radiator. However, if you're going to do this, you want to decide whether you want the grout line or the middle of the tile to fall along the center. This is the typical situation along the back wall of a bathtub surround. In this example, if we center the layout on a joint, we end up with thin little cuts on either side. It's generally more attractive if you have larger cuts. By centering the layout in the middle of a tile, we add half a tile width to the cuts at the sides. The size of the area and the size of the tile determine which centering method leaves you with the wider cuts at the edges. Okay, I'm on my mark.
I'm on there. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, you got that?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right.
Now that we've figured out the layout for our tile, we're snapping some chalk line to keep our rows perfectly straight. Now you don't need to snap a chalk line for each row of tile. Our grid boxes are 2 feet on each side, which will put 9 tiles in each grid box.
See, I'm going to have to mix up some bits in here.
Yeah. Okay, I'm on my mark.
I'll go. Okay, next one.
Yep.
At HOMETIME, we're always moving from job site to job site, hauling around a lot of tools and materials. So we need a truck that can handle the workload, like the Chevy S-Series extended cab pickup.
This truck is ideal whether we're hauling materials from this construction site or driving down the highway. Its new step-designed rear bumper and lower step-up height make loading and unloading easier than ever.
This 2-tier loading feature lets us expand our cargo space. We can store tools on the bottom and materials on the top. And with these convenient cargo tie-downs, we can make sure everything stays secure.
No matter what kind of load we carry, this double-walled construction protects the truck inside and outside and keeps it looking new.
This extended cab gives us even more space for extra tools or for bringing along a couple of helpers on the tough jobs.
This Chevy full-size pickup 4x4 is another one of our favorites for do-it-yourself jobs. This truck comes standard with a 4.3-liter V6 engine to give us enough torque and towing capacity to clear a couple of trees from this new home site. Okay, back up a couple of more feet.
Also standard are its rear-wheel anti-lock brakes that give you controlled, smooth stopping. That's the kind of security you should demand from any braking system. And Chevy's got it.
Even with all the work we put this truck through, it still looks like new. The double-walled cargo box keeps any wear on the inside from showing through on the outside.
And all of Chevy's fleet-side pickup trucks give us the option of 2-tier loading. So we have the option of using the box as is or creating a second loading level.
Okay, that's good. Whether we're carrying passengers, hauling cargo, or pulling a trailer, this all-wheel drive Chevy Astro passenger van is the perfect vehicle.
With its combination of all-wheel drive and four-wheel anti-lock brakes, this van gives us the control we need, even in the worst weather.
In fact, the Chevy Astro van has the largest towing capacity of any van in its class, and its versatility makes sense for every do-it-yourselfer.
The spacious cargo area is ideal for hauling these shrubs or any other material. And with these available Dutch doors, loading is even more convenient. No matter what size of your project, you'll get the job done with a Chevy truck.
They've been a big part of every HOMETIME project, and it's easy for us to see why the most dependable, longest-lasting trucks are Chevy trucks.
Thin-set mortar is almost always the best material for setting floor tile. You apply the thin set for the tiles the same way you apply it for the wonderboard. You spread it first with the flat side of the trowel and then comb it out with the notches. For floors, you usually use a trowel with notches that are 1/4 inch wide and 3/8 of an inch deep. But check the instructions on your mortar bag. It may recommend different sized trowels for different situations.
Here you go. Oh, thanks. We're using a 3/16 inch grout space around the tile, which is typically a lot more than you'll see on a countertop or wall tile, which means we have enough room to set the tile into the thin set and then give it a little bit of a twist. This helps spread out any mortar underneath, and you get real good contact between the tile and the mortar. You're not left with any air gaps under the tile. You're probably going to have some mortar squeeze up in the gaps. And you can clean this out with a pencil and a wet sponge. Well, once you get an area set, you want to go back and make any minor adjustments. The mortar allows you to do something like this. And again, you just want to kind of check the spacing. It's pretty much just a visual thing. If it looks fine sitting here, you're in good shape. Now for floor tile, most tile setters recommend that you beat the tiles into place. You can use a padded grout float, or we like to use a rubber hammer. Beating just helps to set the tile even more solidly into the thin set underneath.
With all the tile cutting tools available, it is possible to cut the tile to fit around the casing of a door jamb. But it ends up being easier to cut a little bit off the bottom of the casing and slip the tile under it. There's a special tool called a jam saw that makes this easy. I'm using a floor tile underneath it with a piece of cardboard to approximate the thickness of the mortar. This means the cut is at the right height.
All right, our final touch here in setting the tile is to install a synthetic marble threshold. Now these are a lot easier to work with than real marble because you can cut them with regular hand tools. And they are available at most tile and flooring stores.
Now, something we haven't talked about is this design we've put in on the floor. It's just one of the simplest things that you can do to make your tile a little more interesting. Just replace certain tiles with a different color.
Well, this is just one of the ways that you can take advantage of the flexibility in working with ceramic tile. Now let's take a look at some wall tile that we installed in another bathroom, and we'll take a look at the steps that were involved in putting together the tile on the countertop.
Depending on how complicated your tile design is, you can spend a lot of time just figuring out where your first tile is going to go. But once you have the layout worked out, it goes a little faster. We tend to get a little carried away on the tile design because we can add different accent designs and interesting layouts without spending a whole lot extra on materials, just more time. Most of the time with wall tile, you can use ready-mix adhesive like this and a special notch trowel. This one's got V-notches on it. First, you spread it out with the flat side of the trowel. And this is just to make sure that the adhesive is coming into contact with the whole surface of the wall. Then you turn the trowel around and use the notch side to comb it out. This leaves just the right amount of adhesive. There. Now, when you put up the tiles, you end up flattening out the adhesive, squishing down the lines and spreading it out. There. These wall tiles go right next to each other. You've got these tiny little lugs on each side to keep them a little bit apart. Part of setting the tile is making the cuts, and that was a big part of setting this wall. I need to cut the square pieces to fit, and make the diamonds, and fit the accent pieces. Generally, you want to put the full tile in first, then measure for the cut tiles. You can make a lot of cuts with this basic tile cutter. You just score the surface, then snap the tile apart. It usually makes a pretty straight cut, but it's a good idea to smooth out the cut edge with a rub stone. When you put in tiles one at a time, you'll probably want to put the adhesive right on the back of the tile directly. They call this back buttering. Okay, there we go. And when you install cut tiles, try to put the cut side along the outside of the tiled area. So here, I'm putting the cut towards the corner where it won't show that much. Of the many tools that you can use to cut your tile, one of the simplest are these tile nippers. They're useful for curved cuts like around fixtures. They are kind of tough to use. You sort of have to clip away until you get the shape you want. Just a little bit at a time. Oh, shoot. Well, you have to be careful. It's easy to nip away more than you want. You draw another one out here.
To get smoother curves, you can use a rod saw. Now this is an abrasive blade that fits into a hacksaw handle. For perfectly round cuts, you can use a special tile hole cutting drill bit. Most tile setters have a tub saw. Rental stores carry these for do-it-yourselfers. It has a special abrasive blade that's cooled with water as it cuts. A tub saw is the best way to make cuts to create an inside corner. Often you need to make this sort of cut-to-fit tile around a cabinet base. Every tile project is different. On this bathroom wall, Suzanne and I created an intricate accent for the top of some tile wainscoting.
To make our border here, we're using 2 different trim pieces made available with this line of tile. We have 2 strips of this thin little accent tile. And we're finishing off our border with this bullnose tile. This is the most common type of trim tile. It's got a rounded, smooth, finished edge. These diamond shapes in the middle of the border are a combination of regular full wall tiles and wall tiles that we cut in the middle. Now, I used a tub saw to do that. In fact, yeah, I need to go do some more right now.
As with almost any tile job, once you've established your layout pattern, it's just a matter of getting the tile up on the wall before the adhesive dries and cutting the tiles to fit your particular situations.
Bullnose over there?
There's none over here. I think there's some in the other room, though.
I better go check.
Well, one thing about this bathroom, it seems like every wall section's a whole nother exercise in tile layout. Although the three walls around the tub here are really pretty typical. On the back walls, the tiles are symmetrical. In other words, we center them over the middle of the tub. This way we have equal sized cut tiles on either side. For the side wall, we thought the front tiles were the most important. So here we went with full-size tiles and ended up with cut tiles in the back of the rows. Since this is a tub, we only took the tile up part way. Our border pretty much establishes the height here, so we started working with full tiles right underneath the border, and we cut our tiles along the tub area. If this were a shower, we'd start with full tiles here above the tub, work up to a height of about 5 feet, finish off that with full tiles, and then cap the whole thing off with bullnose.
Well, I hate to say it, but I don't think we're going to have enough bullnose to finish.
Oh, you're kidding.
No. These ends, they pick up a lot of bullnose, and I think we're going to be just about 14 pieces short.
I'll bet it'll take 3 or 4 days to get some more.
Yeah. You know, we could just do the bullnose later when we do the bullnose around the base.
Yeah, you know, one thing we could do is start some grouting. Nothing keeping us from that.
Yeah.
So grouting for tomorrow?
Okay.
Okay. Why not? But before we get into grouting, let's check out how to tile a countertop.
Whoa. There we go.
There's a few different alternatives you can use for the underlayment for a tile countertop. Now, a lot of professionals will use 3/4 inch plywood with 3/4 inch strips underneath that for a backup for the full 1.5 inch thickness.
But there are some people who think that wood alone isn't the right underlayment for a counter. It's going to get wet, it's going to swell up, and the grout might crack. And I guess that's the position that we're going to take. So we're going to put down a layer of plywood first, and then put a layer of concrete tile backer board on top of that.
Well, I've already cut a hole in the plywood for the sink. Now, the tricky part is going to be cutting a hole into the backer board that's going on top, because you can't use a saw to do that. I think for the time being, I'll lay the backer board on top and then mark its location by tracing the outline here for the cutout in the plywood. That should pretty well do it. Now, to cut the odd shape for this sink, we have to score the backer board on both sides of the sheet. Okay, hold that tight there. All right, then what we do is just pop it back up here and then tap real gently with a hammer around the opening, and it should pop here at the score. There we go. I will attach the backer board to the plywood here using a thin set mortar. Just like when you're installing backer board on a floor, you trowel the mortar out first with a flat side and then the notch side.
Is it all the way down on your end?
Yeah, that's looking pretty good.
Okay.
Slow.
Okay. We'll just use a couple of galvanized roofing nails here to keep it in place. Here, you want some?
Looks pretty good, yeah. Okay. I think that countertop over the toilet's going to be a real benefit, you know that?
Yeah.
Well, we added a straight piece of countertop here over the top of the toilet, sitting on a little support rail that we attached to the ceramic tile. And of course, we made sure the toilet would fit under it before we installed it. There you go.
Well, I guess we're all set till tomorrow, huh?
Yep. I'll grab the drill here. Guess that'll do it. Okay, here you go. I took 9/16 off.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, I see what you're doing.
Yeah, see, if we didn't
Sure.
cut the field tiles to fit in this accent strip, then it would throw the joints all out of whack like it is right here.
Oh, yeah. So we can go ahead and set it then, right?
Yeah, and we got a lot of cuts to do around the sink here.
How about a little tub saw action on this one?
Yeah, that'll be good.
I'll
Yeah.
set it up.
Well, after a little head scratching, we finally got the layout for our countertop all figured out. Now, we established it from this front corner here because it's a lot more visible than going from the back or the sides. This is a special trim tile for along the edge of the countertop. The best way to make sure that you get the right amount of mortar on the front part of it is to use a margin trowel to put it directly on the tile. Now, when you're doing a countertop, you always want to start with the edge tile. Now for us, our first tile is this special outside piece here. You can see how it's rounded to go around the outside edge. Now since there's no special tile piece for an inside corner, we're going to have to miter cut some edge pieces to go right here. Okay, well I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of the tile that go along here.
Okay, yeah, the inset's starting to dry out here. Well, once we started laying the tile here on this front corner, we pretty much had to follow the grid after that. So we end up with some fairly complex cuts on this inside corner. But it doesn't look bad, and anyway, it's more important to have this front corner look as good as possible. With tile layout, you're always making a few compromises to get the best overall look. But here's another thing. When you're setting around a sink opening, you're going to have a lot of these odd cuts. Now these don't have to be perfect because the rim of the sink overlaps an inch or so onto the counter and hides these edges.
Now, there might be some time when you want to put a tile on a countertop that doesn't come with a special counter edge trim piece. In that case, what you want to do is cut some small strips out of the regular tile, attach it to the edge here, and then take a bullnose tile and let that run long over the edge to cover the other piece. You just want to make sure that it's this way, horizontal, and not the other way around. And that the smaller piece has the factory smooth edge on the bottom.
Well, once we finished up with our tile countertop, we moved right ahead to the tile backsplash. Now because we're adhering tile to tile, again we're using the silicone sealant. Our backsplash has a piece of bullnose at the top, and we're using these little plastic spacers to keep everything from sliding down. And we'll have to let the tile sit overnight before we grout it.
Now, if you find yourself in the situation we're in, we've got just a little bit of tile work left to do, you might be able to use this shortcut. We're using silicone sealant to attach the tiles instead of regular tile adhesive. The trick to doing this is to be very careful about how much sealant you put on. You don't want to put on too much so that the tiles don't sit flat against the wall surface. And we're also using some little plastic spacers to keep the tiles from sliding down the wall. Now, using silicone goes a little bit slower than using regular tile adhesive, and it is a little bit more expensive. But the advantage is you don't have to wait overnight before you can grout. And that's an advantage for Dean and me because we're going to try and get this bathroom finished up today. There's something else that's kind of interesting here. You can see how the bullnose is great at making an outside corner. You lay the regular tile flush up against the end of the wall. You let the bullnose run long to cover that edge. Also, up here at the end of our tiled area, we're using a different type of bullnose. Now, this trim piece is called double out because it has two smooth outside edges.
And we're also using silicone caulk to attach the bullnose tile here to the bottom of the wall. Actually, silicone is the best choice here. Mastic wouldn't hold one tile to another quite as well.
Well, I'm all done.
Okay, good. We should be able to grout in a few minutes here.
Well, you say to wait a half hour.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You know, I think I'm going to put caulk instead of grout between the vinyl floor and the tile. That'll give us a nice waterproof seal.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
need some more grout out here. Okay. The final tiling process is putting grout in between the tiles. Grout is just colored concrete. Well, not really. Concrete has got stones in it, and grout is nice and smooth. For instance, the grout that we used for the wall tile, where the joints are narrower, is really smooth. Here on the floor, I'm using a sanded grout because the joints are wider and a little texture looks nice. The first step is to really pack it down into the joints. This is a grout float that I'm using, and it has a soft pad on the bottom. And you push the grout around the floor diagonally. Once you've got an area done, hold the float perpendicular to the floor and push everything off the tiles. Once again, if you do this diagonally, you'll leave just the right amount of grout in the joints. You keep the process going by using a damp sponge over the top of the tiles real lightly. Then turn the sponge over and just go over it a little heavier to shape the grout in the joints. You just want a little bit of a curve to it. Finishing off the grout is a multi-step process. No matter how clean you think you've gotten the tiles, in a little while there'll be a haze over the surface of the tile, so you'll have to come back and wash it off. So I brought a clean bucket of water and a clean sponge. I wipe once with each side of the sponge, then I rinse it off and keep going. And even after I've done this once, I may still have a haze in a little while, so I'll have to come back and do this again.
Grouting a wall isn't too much different from grouting a floor. The grout float you use on walls is slightly softer than what you use to grout a floor, and the grout is likely to be finer, no sand in it. Since grout joints are typically very thin on wall tile, you don't spend too much time shaping the grout in the joint. You just smooth it down into an even line. And as always, the most time-consuming part is rinsing the grout and the grout haze off the surface.
The grout between ceramic tiles is a very hard material, but it can crack. And if it's going to crack, it'll usually do it at a joint where the tile meets another material. What happens is the two surfaces are going to expand and contract with temperature changes, but they'll do it at different rates. And this might cause the grout to be pulled apart, to crack. So what you want to do is to caulk in that joint area instead of grout. Now when we were grouting, we tried not to get any grout between the tile and the tub so that we could caulk in there. We're also going to do it around our shower. And if you have a ceramic tile floor, you might want to think about caulking where the tile butts up to the tub or to the cabinets.
Well, once the grout's cured, it's a good idea to apply a silicone sealer to keep them from picking up stains. Now, we've shown you the basics for laying floor, wall, and countertop tile. Now we want to visit a couple of past HOMETIME projects to show you some more tile setting tricks and materials. We had a subcontractor install a mortar bed here in the shower. It provides a good barrier for moisture, and it's a nice solid surface to lay our tile. Now, this isn't necessarily a job for a do-it-yourselfer. That's why we had a subcontractor do it. And this is just the first layer. We'll be installing a second layer that will slope up toward the walls. But first, we have to install our shower pan.
The shower pan is a waterproof fabric that's required as a moisture barrier between two layers of mortar. And it's made out of a plastic called CPE. And I've already marked the dimensions of our shower bed, and I've creased it along the edges. Now the trick is to fold it so we've got one corner with which we can begin our installation, which would be right here.
All right, to get started, we spread a ready-mix organic mastic over the mortar to secure the fabric. Then we lay the material down, starting in the corner. We position the creases at the walls. And we press down to seal the pan to the adhesive. We cut enough material to continue up the studs, and we secure it to the framing.
We do have to cut the fabric right here in the middle, first for the drain and then for the flange bolts. We'll start with the drain. You want to feel where it is, and then using the utility knife, we make our cut, following the edge all the way around. That opens a hole for the drain. Then we feel under the fabric for the flange bolt holes and cut slots for the bolts. We squeeze caulk under the pan to seal it to the flange and set the bolts in place. Now we slide the upper part of the flange down over the bolts and tighten them securely. And we finish by screwing down the strainer.
We want to cover up the shower walls with backer board to give us a good surface to tile on. But first we want to staple up these strips of builder's felt to fur out the front of the studs. The felt is the same thickness as the shower pan membrane, so it builds up the studs to match the overlapping pan edges on the corner. And the backer board is also a hair thinner than drywall, so the felt strips will make the backer board surface come out flush with the drywall here at the edge of the shower.
Now we're ready to secure the backer board to the shower framing, and we laid this blanket down to protect the shower pan and the drain. We're starting at the bottom of the back wall and working up. The first sheet goes right over the lip of the fabric pan, but we're using half-inch spacers to keep the bottom above the material. As before, we're using roofing nails to secure the backer board, and we only nail at or above the top of the shower pan to keep from puncturing the fabric.
We've cut the 3x5 sheets 40 inches wide to match the width of the wall. That means fewer vertical seams. We finished the wall with a piece cut to fit flush between the previous sheet and the drywall on the ceiling. It's pretty much the same for the next wall, so we can skip ahead a little bit. Well, the second wall went in pretty much the same as the first, although we did have to make some pretty exact cuts to get a nice tight fit here next to the drywall. And we have the first sheet done here on the third wall, but this next sheet, that's going to be a different story. We have to cut out holes for the valve stems of the shower control. So we'll measure over from the side sheet like so to the middle of the stem, okay, and then we'll measure down from the top of the last sheet. Now we want to transfer our measurements to a piece of backer board we've cut to size. And we drive a nail through to mark the back side. We draw the openings we need with a compass, like so, and then score the mesh with a carbide tip knife. There, that ought to do it. I repeated the process on the other side of the board. It's just a matter of flipping it over once again to the front side and hammering out our openings. Now this isn't a real exact clean opening, but again remember this will be covered by tile and a handle flange. For now we just slide the piece over the stems, making sure the rest of the sheet fits. And we nail it in.
We made a similar hole in the next piece to accommodate the shower head arm, and we secure that sheet in place. Okay, we've got our backer board on all the shower walls, so we're ready for our next step, and that's mudding and taping the backer board seams. On the walls, it works best to spread a layer of thin set mud first, starting on the horizontal seams.
Then we lay the mesh tape over it, about like that, and use a tape knife to embed it in the mud.
On the corners, we lay the mud in the seam.
And using my fingers, I wedge the tape into the joint, and then make a couple passes with a knife.
That's our final step on the shower wall preps, so we're ready to start the tiling.
We're installing 3x3 tiles here on the countertop, also on the deck for the whirlpool and the shower. And they come in these pre-spaced sheets, so it makes installation go a lot faster. It's a porcelain tile with a glazed surface. It's durable and being scratch resistant and stain proof. It's also rated impervious to moisture according to national standards. And we started tiling on the back wall, tiling out from the center here, so we end up with the same size tiles on either side. Gives us a nice balanced look. We also left out a few tiles here for a shelf. We started with full tiles at the top and cut tiles on the bottom. This is where our second layer of mortar comes in.
Here on the second wall, we kept the horizontal gaps for grout in line with the back wall. And this gives us a sense of symmetry and continuity. And we finished the edge with a row of bullnose tiles, and they cover up the joint where the backer board and the drywall meet. Now, starting on this side does mean that we had to have a small cut piece on the opposite side, but it's really less noticeable there.
Well, we're done with the bottom third of the wall. Notice how we handled this angled edge with a piece of cut tile and bullnose. And we left the bottom part open on both sides for the shower curb that we'll install later. With that, we're all up to date on our work, and we can get going again. So next thing we want to do is get the mastic up here in this area for our next batch of tile.
Here's where these pre-spaced sheets can really save us some time. With 16 tiles on a sheet, we've been clipping along pretty well on this wall.
The first tiles were lined up according to reference lines that we laid earlier. But once you're in the field, you can use the other tiles to keep the tiles straight and the grout lines square. And then be sure to twist the tiles a little bit and use a grout float to make sure they're secured firmly to the wall. Now it's just a matter of moving across the wall and up to the top.
Okay, well, we've tiled up to the stems for the shower valve controls. And now we need to make a couple of cuts in the tiles to accommodate them. So I set the tile in place and make one mark, put it next to the neighboring tile, make another mark, draw a line connecting the 2 points, and that's where we'll make our cut.
For cutting a tile in the corner like this, a nippers will work fine.
With the pieces cut and back buttered with adhesive, we set them in position. These cuts don't have to be absolutely perfect. They're going to be covered by a flange later on. Slipped a little. There you go. Well, that does it for the tile setting inside the shower. Now, our next step will be to fill in all the gaps with grout, but we really need to let these dry overnight. So instead, we're going to pour our shower curb once we get a mold built for it. Let's see.
All right. Now, we have some forms put together here for our shower curb using pieces of backer board. And boxes of tile like this are holding everything together for us. Now we're all set for our mortar.
There you go.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it. The mortar goes between the boards, which have been cut to the proper height for the curb. And we cover the wire mesh, which is sandwiched around the edge of our fabric shower pan. We mix the mortar for this fairly thin. It's a combination of Portland cement, sand, and water. And we chop it or slice it with a trowel to eliminate air pockets. And we'll let it stand overnight before removing the forms.
The mortar for the shower curb has had plenty of time to dry, so we pulled off the forms, and it looks pretty good. Now, eventually, this will be covered by the 3x3 tiles, some on the top and more on the sides. But we'll lay those in later when we're ready to tile the floor.
Now we want to set in some accessories that have been included in our shower design. We're going to start with a soap dish that we left an opening for yesterday. A mastic doesn't work on the back of these, so what we're using is a special silicone adhesive. We press the dish in place and twist it a bit for good coverage of the glue. Then we anchor the glue with some tape to give the glue time to set up. It takes about 20 minutes for the adhesive to really take hold. We secure the corner shelf the same way, using cardboard shims to create the grout line below. And we set in 2 pieces of tile, which we cut to fill in along the sides of the shelf. To finish off the shower, we had our tile contractor come back and install a mortar bed in the floor area on top of the shower pan. He sloped the top of the mortar down to the drain in the center. The next day we installed the tile floor, a 1-inch square mosaic.
For the curb, we went back to our 3x3 tiles using half bullnose tiles on top with a grout line down the middle, and full tiles on the sides. We had one more step to take after the tile dried, and that was putting down the grout.
Now, let's look at the steps for tiling a whirlpool deck. Here's another situation where you definitely need to use concrete backer board as your tile underlayment.
Our backer board extends beyond the paneling by 3/4 of an inch to form this drip edge, which will help protect the paneling. It will later cover with tile like so. Now, moisture in a bathroom is a fact of life, and we do this type of thing to minimize its impact. Nail this thing down.
We're also adding 3/4 inch blocking underneath our backer board overhang. This is to help support it, and it'll later be covered by the trim tiles.
The tile layout for this whirlpool deck is quite complicated. The sides of the platform are angled, and this meant a lot of cutting at the corners and along the sides.
The trim pieces go right on top of the blocking that we nailed underneath the drip edge. A thin set mortar goes on top on the backer board, and a mastic goes on the side where the wood is.
For a long-lasting surface, be sure to get the proper adhesive for the surface you're tiling.
And take the time to clean off any adhesive that sticks to the tile surface. A wet sponge usually does the trick. Once all the surface pieces are laid in, we can finish it off with a backsplash.
One common type of tile that is easy for do-it-yourselfers to install is tiny mosaic tiles that are fastened together in sheets. They're usually held together with a thin mesh or some small rubber buttons. These sheets of mosaic are sometimes available with patterns of different color tiles incorporated into them. Both the mesh and the buttons are eventually buried under the adhesives and grouts and aren't visible when the job is finished. Now, let's look at a floor tile job, where before we tiled, our contractor put down an isolation membrane over the mud.
One ought to be plenty interested in putting this border down, don't you think?
Yeah, have to use all that geometry we learned so well in high school. But at least now we know what an isolation membrane is. And basically, it's a piece of rubber between two layers of fiberglass. And our tile contractor spread it over the entire floor. And here's how it works. If the mortar bed underneath should shift or crack a little bit, the rubber will stretch somewhat. So in other words, the membrane will give a little bit instead of the tiles on top of it. And once again, we're reminded that one of the most important parts of any tile installation job is the underlayment.
Well, the second most important thing has got to be the layout. And we have a pretty complicated one here. We have these 10-inch green tiles in the field, and this 1-inch mosaic pattern as a border around the kitchen. You can get these preset mosaics in a lot of different patterns. We picked out the color combination we wanted, and the manufacturer set it in these sheets for us. Now, if you've done your layout right, there should be room for 9 tiles in this area. If you leave about 1/4 of an inch for a grout joint. So I put them in, and adjust them, and beat them down with a mallet to set the tile in the mortar real well.
More mud.
Okay, thanks.
design has a feature strip of mosaic tiles around the edge. These are preset 6-inch wide strips of tile, so they're pretty easy to install. There's some spaces left behind the feature strip, so we just fill these in with more of the field tile.
The danger in mixing different types of tile is that they won't be the same thickness. For this job, the mosaic tile is thinner than the green field tile. So we had to build up the underlayment under the mosaic so that the surface would be level.
Well, that about wraps this up.
Yeah, the grout really ties things together nicely.
Well, we've also tried out very large tiles. Well, these are 13-inch square imitation marble tiles. Let's look at how we installed them on a counter and on this floor.
After installing the cabinets, we covered them with 3/4-inch plywood, and we didn't put any buildup under the countertops, and we didn't hang the edges over the cabinets. That was taken care of a bit later. So let's move ahead now.
We had our subcontractors float mortar beds on the countertops as well as on the floor. They made the edges flush with the top of the cabinets, and we later screwed on strips of plywood to create the overhang. The mortar's about 3/4 of an inch deep, which raises the tops the same as the plywood buildup. The mortar gives us a flat, solid surface, which we need for this type of tiling. This is a new style of glazed ceramic tile that's designed to give you the look of a marble surface. In fact, it's called faux marble or false marble. The tiles are 13 inches square, and because of that, you need to put them on a perfectly level surface. Otherwise, any flaws in the substrate will show up along the edges.
Marble's real popular today, but the downsides to it are it is somewhat expensive. It tends to be a little brittle for the do-it-yourselfer, and it can be slippery, so it's not real practical for most of us.
But ceramic tile with a full marble finish is affordable. It has the obvious durability of ceramic tile, and the matte finish is less slippery than marble.
Now, because of its size, it takes a little more pressure to make sure the thin set's covering the entire back of the tile. So we can take a look to see how I did.
Yeah, not too bad. Now, one thing the pros do to make sure they get solid adhesion is to beat the top of the tile with a rubber mallet. That really suits the large-sized tiles.
For the marble look, it's best to go with as narrow a grout joint as possible, and to also match the grout color with the background color of the tile. Now, what this does is downplays the grid-like pattern that characterizes ceramic tile, and it enhances the marble appearance.
Well, we've shown you a bunch of different tile projects. As you can see, with ceramic tile, you've got almost unlimited design options.
The techniques for installing ceramic tile aren't difficult to learn. Still, check out the information in the project guide that's included in the tape packet. And good luck with your tile project.
Thanks for watching.
HOMETIME is made possible by Chevy Truck. Who brings you? Chevy full-size pickups. Today's big pickups for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Chevy S-Series pickups. Today's compact pickups that play as hard as they work. Chevy's Astro all-wheel drive. Today's mid-size van with standard 4-wheel anti-lock brakes. Chevy trucks, the most dependable, longest-lasting trucks on the road. The National HOMETIME PBS series is made possible by the Stanley Works. Since 1843, Stanley's been committed to building quality tools and other products to help you do things right.